I'm a Toho fan. More than one, actually. I've bought a Remu and a Mima coffee mug to go along with. Since the PC98 games are actually my favorite series of games, I never cared much for the Windows games aside from the 6th, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil, or 7th, Perfect Cherry Blossom. I'm also an introvert, but honestly, I wouldn't call myself a weeaboo, even though I've watched the unofficial Toho anime. Either way, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I decided to look around on forums to see if there were actually any ROM hacks for the first 5 Toho games. I searched earlier with no real luck. Maybe they were hosted on other sites or Google didn't pick them up. But as I checked later, I found a forum leading to someone saying that the ROM of Toho 5, they took off a physical copy of the game, which are rare, crashed their PC when trying to run it through the emulator Neko project. Now this is in the context of a Windows PC, not the actual Japanese PC98 itself they used to pull the ROM off. When the PC would start up, it would flash a red and then start up normally. They didn't know what to do, so they posted the ROM on the forum to see if anyone else could figure it out. Most people replied to them saying the computer may be too old to run it, which didn't make sense. So I replied on the forum that I'll give it a look and see if it works on my system. I used the newer version of Neko Project and it ran fine, except for the fact the game was mostly in English and it didn't have the official English patch watermark underneath the giant, in English, Mystic Square. The normal image shows an edit of the normal English patch without the watermark. The questionable part of this was that if it were on a Japanese PC98 disc, it couldn't have been in English, but I had to go eat lunch, so I went and did that first. I come back to my computer, no crash, nothing. However, the title screen did look different. For one, Remu's eyes were closed and shedding tears. There was no quit button either. However, the change that really caught my eye at first sight was the red and black yin-yang orb. Now, if this was some guy's ROM hack, and if you've played the first game in the series, a red and black yin-yang orb actually isn't that strange to begin with. A red and black yin-yang orb actually shows up as the first boss of the game, highly responsive to prayers, named Shingyoku. The missing quit button, however, I tried to select it, but no luck. I was running it in Neko Project, so I could close it at any time. But I digress. It was time for me to actually play the game. I hit start and picked Yuka. Stage 1 was normal, as it should be. I put the difficulty on hard, yet I've never truly beaten this game. And I was shooting enemies and dodging projectiles. It was Mystic Square. I got up to the first boss, Sarah. She said the first lines of dialogue she would normally say, but then I saw this. Sarah here would normally have a smug expression and smile here. Normal styled eyes in pink as well. Though this ROM, her eyes were entirely empty black. There was nothing, and she had a grin I had never seen on Sarah's face before. That smile was, oh boy. I got a bit frightened first seeing this. One other thing to note is that Sarah usually says, that's because I'm supposed to be here. Not this. Okay, going off tangent from the story first. We just finished the Sarah boss fight, and that's exactly what she says. But in the screenshot given in the story, she instead says, "Do you think this is a joke?" Which is the first sign that something is definitely wrong with this ROM. Anyways, let's get back to the story. I was also too in shock from the face and line to notice that she had blood on her arm. Not hyper-realistic blood, but the coloring implied that was blood. Yuka said her usual response of killing Sarah instantly, and Sarah said the same line about taunting Yuka using the normal portrait. Though, Yuka's response meant business when she said, "I'll kill you instantly." Sarah's bullet patterns were normal, but one thing was different. She really did die in one hit. Yuka's dialogue came up, and then when I pressed Z to advance to the next dialogue box... Okay. What the fuck? I don't even know where to begin with this. Sarah's color palette was entirely red and her eyes went black. Parts of her sprite were missing as well. The dialogue here was usually about Sarah complaining that Yuka didn't kill her instantly. But here, the text seemed to be there, but had layers of other text over it. I didn't try to decipher what exactly the other layers of text were, because I more or less just wanted to move on. That image, though, that's something that'll haunt me for quite a bit. After trying to get Sarah's red, eyeless face out of my mind, I went on to stage 2. I noticed that it was similar. Everything was pretty much the same in terms of stage 2. Again, I shot enemies, dodged bullets, and was playing Mystic Square. But when I saw Louise, the stage 2 boss, come up, the dialogue appeared. Louise looked untouched. A pattern I began to notice at this point was that Yuka's dialogue never changed. She said the same lines as she would in the game. But another thing I quickly noticed was that there was an underlying story element to this ROM hack. Shinky's gone mad. And cut to the... And then it showed the screenshot given to us in the story. Yuka does say the same line as she normally would before the fight with Louise actually starts. But Louise says, instead of her normal dialogue, she says, "Please leave. Shinky's gone mad." Implying Shinky is in fact going insane. Louise seemed to be warning Yuka of going further, and she looked completely untouched compared to Sarah. After this dialogue, Louise would use her normal bullet patterns on hard mode. But they were super slow. Like she was giving Yuka a second chance to go back. I started to feel bad. Louise was probably telling not just Yuka, but possibly as many people as she could to escape Makai. Normally in the game's plot, the demons of Makai were leaving because they wanted to Torgen Sokyo. It was clear here that wasn't the case. Instead, they were escaping from Shinky's torment. I'm sorry, Louise, but I have to kill you to move on to the next stage. Forgive me. I made my way onto stage 3. This time, there was no music. It was dead silent. There were no enemies either. The background stayed the same, but there was nothing here. I held down the Z key to fire shots so that I could get rid of the creepy lack of sound. But now the game was really pulling on my heartstrings with what I saw next. Usually this exchange would be something of Alice trying to hush Yuka and shoo her away from Makai. The first thing I noticed about her was that she was bleeding from the eyes. Her left more so than her right. If this was Shinky's doing, God, what happened to her? She must have had something to do. She must have had something done to her that caused her to do all this. And I doubt those bleeding eyes were Alice's only wounds. I went past the dialogue screen and Alice didn't do anything. At all. She wasn't moving or sending bullets my way. It seemed through this she was implying she wanted to die. I moved in several different directions to see if she would move eventually, but she didn't. She stood there, waiting for me to kill her. I actually somewhat started to tear up at this sight. Alice, Shinky's adoptive daughter, had been wounded, and she wanted me to kill her for mercy's sake. I actually said in a whisper, "Remember, I was hesitant to do this," and pressed the Z button. I heard a delayed beep, and she died normally. No dialogue after that. A tear rolled down my cheek as I pressed Z to go to the score screen and on to the next stage. Stage 4 was no different from Stage 3. The silence and the lack of enemies were there. I again held down the Z button to get rid of that silence. This ROM hack story was definitely quite intriguing. I have to give some respect to the dev of this one. Stage 4. I got to Yuki and Mai. No dialogue occurred, and they sent an unbeatable bullet pattern towards me, taking all of my lives and taking all of my continues. I got to the high score screen, and after moving past it, this final image was shown to me. A slowed down version of End of the World, World's End, played along with this image as soon as it showed up. For at least 10 seconds, Shinki seemed to be staring right at me with cold eyes, black sclera, and white rings for the irises. This was especially unnerving. Louise wasn't lying. Shinki did go insane. Her smile wasn't that of the warm smile she normally had on, but the smile of a cold-blooded murderer. She probably had been tormenting Makai for quite a while. No wonder things were getting worse the farther I got in the game. Sarah was Makai's gatekeeper. Of course, she'd be one of the darker ones first. Shinki probably didn't even think about Louise when tormenting Makai, so Louise was able to escape. And Alice? She must have been abused by her. The glitch layered text was most likely because of some sort of curse put on them to keep them from warning people about Shinki. Honestly, I don't know, and I don't want to know. After the screen went to full black, Neko Project went into a non-responding state and crashed. At that point, I DM'd the forum user that it would have been better that their PC crashed than for them to witness the horrors the ROM actually had in store. You might consider this somewhat cheating because I've read this story in the past once already. But when I read it originally, my afterthoughts after reading it, I feel like I didn't do the story enough justice. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll give it another read. Just to make it like actually better than it originally was when I read it. And another reason I decided to reread this creepypasta in particular, I also wanted an excuse to upload a Mystic Square video. I promised creepypasta videos Saturday and Sunday. And obviously I was going to do a creepypasta video today, but I also wanted to do like a Mystic Square video. So I figured, you know what? I have been wanting to reread Dark Square for the past few months now, ever since I read it. Because my thoughts were much different. My thoughts and my mentality have changed since reading it the first time, especially with, how much I've been playing Mystic Square lately and all that ever since then. And I'm honestly quite glad I did, because now I have a much, much better understanding of the events of the game and all that. Well, especially with, me being able to play like play an English patch of the game. it allows for me to like actually know that the dialogue Yuka would say, and the dialogue changes between the characters actually makes sense instead of playing the original Japanese, playing the game unpatched. So the text is in Japanese and you have no idea what they're saying. The English patch fixes that, and because the story is based off an English patched ROM, it honestly just makes the story a bit more believable. And honestly, that's a good thing, because with like Toho fan games and all that existing, like something like this could very easily be made. This could very easily be made. And that also makes the screenshots look more real as well. Because when you actually think about it, Makai was as inhabited by demons, and with Shinki being a goddess, a demon goddess, it makes sense that she would also like absolutely go insane. As to why she went insane, I honestly couldn't tell you, but what I feel like might have been the case for her causing to go insane, power. I feel like the reason she went insane was because of the power. The power went straight to her head, and therefore she just completely lost her sense of reasoning. Unlike, before you fight Yumeko in stage 5, and before you fight her in stage 6, Shinki has that reasoning, but in this story, it's absolutely just all gone, and she goes insane. But it's a bit strange, considering we never hear it, like we hear about Sarah, Louise, Alice, Yuki, Mai, very little of Yuki and Mai, just saying they're unbeatable. And we get Shinki as well. We never get anything about Yumeko for some reason. Don't get me wrong, I actually really like this story, despite apparently the author of this story not really being a good person, and that's alleged. Apparently the author's not a very good person. However, the story itself is really good. It's not perfect, obviously, but because of a lack of mentioning Yumeko, which would have allowed for the story to be even better than it already was. But at the end of the day, it's still a really good story, still really enjoyable. And if you haven't read it already, I do recommend it. In fact, this is the one story I honestly would recommend, especially when it comes to Toho Creepypasta, because there are very few Toho Creepypastas, let alone good ones. Don't remind me of Toho 14 Creepypasta. That one was the worst one. But this while the story does have its flaws, it's not perfect. It's still a really good story, especially when you're a big connoisseur of the PC-98 games like myself, especially Toho 5, which, again, my favorite game. My favorite Toho game, so while it is personal bias towards the story being good, because of that, you could still not play the game and still enjoy the story. Like, you wouldn't exactly know what's different about the actual game and the story, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. You won't enjoy it. And quite honestly, I feel like I actually enjoy it even more now that I actually know all the stuff and everything. So it's actually a really good story. I do recommend it, and yeah, let me know what you thought of this story, and in the comments, let me know what creepypasta you want me to read next Saturday. I'll gladly read it. But yeah, for now, I'm gonna end it. That's Dark Square reread, and take care.